That's about the length of J.P. Morgan's largest yacht that he owned at one point, Corsair, which used to be regularly out in Hempstead Harbor. So the length of Louis' dock there, that was J.P. Morgan's, like J.P. Morgan Chase, who lived over in Glen Cove. And he had his yacht Corsair, which he took. And so this would be much more of a fishing pier versus today as we know it. As we keep coming into the bay here, we're going north right now. We're going towards a dead end, but we're going to make a loop. To our right, here's a Sousa bandshell named after John Philip Sousa, who moved to Port Washington here in 1918 and then later passed in 1936. He was a famous composer that was writing military marches primarily, known as Stars and Stripes Forever. He was born. Can everybody hear me okay? Cool. Great. So as we come around here to Shore Road, many of you guys have maybe driven by here wondering, why are these docks ruins and what is this pile of rocks with the American flag on it? Well, if you'll see right by number 5, the sand mining activity that would happen here on the Port Washington Peninsula. The Cow Neck had really good quality sand for pouring concrete, building and making buildings in New York City. So constantly, for decades, there was sand being exported, so to speak, out of here in Port Washington, digging out from where Mill Pond Acres is now, Soundview, Manor Haven, and that sand was loaded up on barges here, where there was actually a conveyor belt that would take the sand and load it going over the top of Shore Road, similar to a bridge. So these structures here are pre-existing from when that activity was going on. Those barges would leave here. This was a commercially active channel. So as we continue out here, now we're going to head out of the bay. We choose these schedule also based on the tide. And right now we have high tide, so we can get a little closer to the shore, which is nice. This is our Manhasset Bay Marina, where we have Dirty Taco, also known as Lamadas. And we are just to the right here, this is Manhasset Isle. Manor Haven, where we have Haven Marina, Tom's Point Marina, the Manhasset Bay Sportsman's Club, a rod and gun club that's been here for many, many decades, providing a social atmosphere for our town's fishermen as well. Port Washington has an extensive maritime history. Being on the water, it's called Port Washington. Many of us don't get the opportunity to take advantage of the water as much, but Port Washington for many years, certainly in the 70s, was one of the largest harbors in the United States if you counted the amount of boats in the harbor. We are one of the closest protected harbors and largest protected harbors to New York City, just outside of the East River, which starts at the Throgs Neck Bridge. To our right here, we have Tom's Point condos. Didn't always used to be that way, though. Transitioning into our aviation history here, you'll see a photo of a Pan Am Clipper and some of the hangars that used to be standing here on the other side of the peninsula. This small peninsula of Manhasset Isle is what I'm referring to. So if you look on our map here, We're going to be passing by pictures 2 and 3. That's our Pan Am Clipper and our Pan Am hangars. And as we come around the corner here, you'll see an area that is filled with trees and no buildings. And that's the old property that used to be at the end of Sin Sing Drive West. And still, if it was low tide, we would be able to see the old ramps and infrastructure that they had to launch the planes and pull them in and out of the water from Grumman, who was building these planes. Port Washington and Manhasset Bay have been very active aviation-wise in the beginning. Runways. Mitchell Field, which is today's Roosevelt Field, and over in Garden City in Uniondale was an airport, an airstrip that was very popular for a long time, but before that, the planes were taking off on the wicket for one of those flights across the Atlantic. They would be the equivalent of today's $8,000. So they weren't any Southwest deals or anything like that, but it was certainly a experience for the very wealthy. This early stages of our aviation history. Well, Manhasset Bay is a very well protected harbor. So as we're heading west here, away from Manhasset Isle, we have Manor Haven Park to our right hand side, and Manor Haven, the Capri events where people would come out here and relax on the weekends. We'll talk about some other locations where people would socialize, come out from Manhattan, or just locals as well. So as we come out here, I'm just going to go over some what you're looking at currently, and then I'll go back to some of our historical information. But we have Capri East here, and that's our East Marina, and there's Capri West. Capri West is home to Butler's Flat. It also was home to the Barge, which was a popular bar restaurant that used to be over there back in the 70s. But this Capri Marina is really important for our maritime activity, bringing jobs and boats and travelers in here. Cruisers, they call them, traveling on their boats, choosing to choose this safe harbor over other ones. So this marina helps us have the capability to bring in more visiting cruisers to Port Washington. We settled in Port Washington, ended up acquiring most of the land from whoever was here before, which I would imagine would be the Native Americans. But that's one of the oldest houses in Port Washington, on the water right there. That was part of the Cornwall family farm. That was built in the 1850s. Right now, there's a little flagpole in front of it with no flag on it. That's the Cornwall house. It has a beautiful arch on the entrance to the driveway. It's a dead-end street, so not many of us may go down it. But a beautiful arch with ivy, and it's very, very pretty entrance there. But the other thing that I wanted to speak about, and I'm blanking out on what they called it, but I'm going to pull it up. But I know the numbers. Okay. So this development, when they were selling it in 1908, it started, and 500 in 1911, which would have been about $260,000 for one of the waterfront properties here in Sands Point. At the top 5, if you look up top 5 yacht later, you can see some pictures of it online. But the reason they're there is because their daughter is one of the top 10 U.S. tennis players playing in the U.S. Open. It would have been Sands Point, more of Laddingtown as well, which would be the Buchanan side, which would have been the older Rio. And you watch the opening credits, there'll be some drone shots that are exactly where we are, pretty much look exactly the same, and they edited the videos so that they put those houses that they used in the film era. And since then, there's a lot of different movies and famous actors and actresses that have stayed in these houses here. For example, this one with the white seawall right in front of us, there's a film on Netflix called Hunters. It's a series, and their opening scene, it's pretty, if you've seen it, it's hard to forget. When he died in 1936. Those houses are towards the end of Barker's Point Road. It was not a complete non-fiction story. There was many truthful elements to it. Over in Kings Point.
저 커네디컷으로.
And that's Mr. Ken Langone's house, our founder of Home Depot. Mr. Still being out in the sound with a little more cleaner water. Hill. If you guys approach by car and you come down Middle Neck Road, you make the turn and come down towards the water. Back in the early 1900s, about like 1910 to about 1918. And not only was she here, she eventually moved on. She had a house in Newport, which is also can be viewed, and it's preserved as a museum. I've gone through there. It's beautiful. Totally recommend going there if you're in Newport. You guys may be looking at this tent. It's kind of hard to miss. This is the house of one of our current day financiers, Mr. Joel Greenblatt. He has a master class if you're trying to get a house like that. And picture number 10 was the Sloan's family house 3 to 4 years ago. I hope you guys are enjoying the cruise so far. And this is really a picture perfect night here. foundation to raise money so they can refurbish the exposure like that to salt water. It's a little bit of a musty basement in there, but they also, whoever owns the lighthouse has the rights to lay an electrical cable across to Sands Point to get power. That would be. We're offering people to come out and stay with them, and they can spend a night on the lighthouse, totally off the grid. We would take them out at 11 o'clock. I would pick them up at the town dock in Port Washington, bring them out here on the boat, coordinated with high tide, drop them off at 11, then I'd come back the next morning. And it always seemed like everybody was eagerly awaiting my return. However, that lighthouse has also been on a couple episodes of I'm forgetting what channel it is, but with the Ghost Stories show. Because there's rumors that there's a paranoid for $13.9 million, you can have that property. Technically, in Westchester, you would have a Pelham zip code. I don't think the mailman delivers mail to the island, though. Like 18 or 19, the Department of Corrections, it was really pretty much idle, nothing happening over there. Department of Corrections sold it to Department of Parks and Recreation. And it's currently owned and managed by Department of Parks and Recreation. But right after they sold it, we had something called the coronavirus. And take our turn, you'll see the Throgs Neck Bridge. And while we won't get to the Throgs Neck, and Fort Totten was built at the same time as Fort Schuyler. And Fort Schuyler and Fort Totten were the Civil War military forts for the Union Army. Number 6, our photo of Aphrodite, which I mentioned earlier. That boat is, the style of that boat is built as, it's called a commuter boat at the time. Most boats would be going not faster than how fast we're going right now at that time. But boats like that were traveling at like 30, 35 knots, which at the time was pretty revolutionary. Burning a lot of gas, or diesel, or whatever they were burning. I had somebody come to me many years ago, back in like 2016, bridge for the LIRR, that originally just stopped in Great Neck, but once they built that bridge, tour now. Who wants to guess how big the yacht is in feet? 175. Alright, it's 200 feet. So you guys both get the prize tied for first. That boat is 200 feet. It's called Top 5 2. So I guess they had a smaller one before that. It hosts 12 guests. It has 6 cabins and captain, first mate. We'll see if they greet us with champagne as we come by. The boat has a range of 4,200 nautical miles. So that is no problem going over to the Mediterranean. This yacht goes under the Throgs Neck Bridge. It has to have a pilot come on board to go down to New York City. Any boats over 100 feet are required to have a pilot who is somebody who pretty much memorizes the entire I had to guess there's definitely guests on board right now because there's jet skis out, they got the toys out, they got the umbrellas up, and they can walk to the US Open. And look at that beach club, you can see right through the middle of the boat. Germany, Canada, Finland. Mooring field, there's some yellow moorings, the balls that the boats are anchored to, and those are free for visitors to pick up for up to 48 hours. So they can come in here. It's a very inviting feature of Port Washington. Get some or Saturday afternoon sailing with the local yacht clubs. Manhasset Bay has a huge there with a second story porch in the middle. To the left of that you can see there's the cars going by. That's Leeds Pond on Planham Road. Probably many of us are familiar with that area. And as we're pulling in to the Port Washington Yacht Club, which was established here in 1905, it's been a center along with the newest yacht club started in 1905. After Manhasset Bay and Knickerbocker, and the North Shore Yacht Club started as a canoe club, being the oldest boating club. If you recall, a yacht club since it was a canoe club in 1850s. North Shore Yacht Club is right next to Capri Marine going on at the Port Washington Public Library.